Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Stacy Moore.
I'm Nicole Finari.
And this week we're going to overanalyze War Dogs, the I guess, slacker wartime comedy War Dogs.
Yes.
That's accurate? Two friends in their early 20s living in Miami Beach during the Iraq War, that would be the second one, exploit a little-known government initiative that allows small businesses to bid on U.S. military contracts, but the pair gets in over their heads when they land a $300 million deal to arm the Afghan military. It's directed by Todd Phillips of the Hangover movies and stars Jonah Hill, Miles Teller, and there's a couple of brief cameos from, what's his face? Oh, yeah, Bradley Cooper. Mm-hmm. I guess mostly this, do you even want to say that this is a socially conscious movie?
No, it totally failed to be socially conscious almost entirely. It should have been.
I feel like it wanted to be.
Yeah.
It was almost like ostensibly that. Like, it starts out with this really cool kind of graphically visual montage of military spending and how, like, war is such a cash cow.
Yeah.
And you start to think, oh, this is really going to go somewhere.
And it goes nowhere.
It doesn't really go anywhere.
No.
It seemed to be your typical male-dominated plotline of, I'm nowhere in life, but I've got this beautiful wife and a baby on the way. Oh, wait, here comes my friend who has a great business idea. Now we're loaded. Isn't everything great? Oh, no, wait.
And we're so badass.
Right.
We can drive through the triangle of death.
The triangle of death.
And, like, get shot at and be okay.
Fend off, insurgents and whatnot. And then, oh, wait, but there's a price. There's
dun, dun.
Right, to all of our decadence.
Yeah.
So it was basically just that, with just the kind of the background of what could have been a socially conscious film.
Yeah. So we'll definitely, I want to get into the what could have been, because we both read the Rolling Stone article that the movie was based on, and then is now a book. I didn't read the whole book, but I read the article. That. Yeah, the guy just kept going with the story because it was so interesting. But as always, per tradition, movie stuff first.
Okay.
So I will say question number one, because I've got a lot of divided responses on this.
Oh, okay.
Jonah Hill, yay or nay?
I do believe in Jonah Hill.
Okay.
I say good performance. As good as Moneyball? Maybe not. But pretty darn good.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem with Jonah Hill. I don't, like, love him as an actor, but I've had a couple people say to me, oh, I can't stand, he's such a terrible actor. I'm like,
what?
I don't think so.
That's bizarre.
I thought he played that part as well as could be expected.
He's genuinely talented. I'm sorry, that's off the table. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Generally a big fan of Miles Teller. They didn't give him...
He's likable.
Too much to do here.
No.
To stretch his range. So I will say complaint number one, because it just kept hitting me in the face. This has to be the most obvious, on-the-nose soundtrack in a movie that I've ever heard in my entire life. I mean, it was like cliche. The army shows up, and it's Creedence Clearwater.
Right, CCR.
Yeah. And I'm like, seriously, guys? And then they're in Vegas. They do Frank Sinatra as the open. And I was like, oh my god, gotta stop. It was like the most...
Yes, of course they had to go to Vegas, because it's Todd Phillips, and you can't have a movie without them in Vegas.
I mean, it was so on the nose as to be... Like,
annoying.
Yeah. It was, like, laughable, and not in a good way for this being a comedy. I didn't laugh. I didn't find any of it funny.
Right. Even at the funny parts. Even at the parts where I was like, oh, I should be laughing here.
And then, I mean, this completely fails the Bechdel test by not even having any other woman in it. Oh, jeez.
Right. There was the wife, I suppose, who was, your classic kind of concerned Madonna off to the side, where she's gorgeous and she's worried, but she's not too naggy. But she's also the moral center. Just real Xerox of a character.
Yeah, adds nothing of value. And here's where I have the real sort of bone to pick with this as a movie, which is that this movie tries very hard, and the wife and the baby are the two of the biggest ways they try very hard to sell us that poor David got in over his head, didn't know what he's doing, and we should feel somehow sorry for him that he got caught up in war profiteering. Mm-hmm. And the more sympathetic they try to make him, the less I like him at every passing moment. I'm like, there was nothing sympathetic about that character.
No, he was constantly lying to cover his ass, taking advantage of. It'd be one thing if he was like his friend, and who was Ephraim. Thank you.
Yeah.
If he was like Ephraim, who doesn't really mind what he's doing, like he doesn't feel bad at all. He's a sociopath, but he doesn't feel bad, and so like I could almost, he cares about money. He's making money. I respect that. But was it David? Was the other one? Actually feels terrible about profiting off of the senseless deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. So.
Yeah, and then they give you this whole thing how he was anti-war and he compromises his principles to do this, and you're like, that just makes him worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like, so I just was sort of like, you should have played this a la, Wall Street Gordon Gekko. Like, give me someone I love to hate. Like,
right.
Ephraim you just hate. Mm-hmm. It's not fun to hate.
Sure.
I was like, give me someone fun to hate. Don't try to sell me that he's sympathetic. There's nothing sympathetic about this guy.
I kind of like Bradley Cooper's character. Not, like, in a potent way. But just, he seemed like, whenever he would show up, I'd be like, oh, good, it's that guy. He's back. Good.
Right, because, again, not at all trying to be sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And at least has a coolness factor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll say this, spoiler alert, to which you come to the end, and he gets the money, and you're like, he doesn't deserve that money.
That was dumb, and that was so out of character for Bradley Cooper's, gun runner character. Like, why would he have just given that guy a bunch of money because he felt bad for him?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
That made no sense. It was totally inconsistent.
It made no sense, and the only reason I can imagine that it was included was because you feel so bad for David, who again, this movie is trying to sell you on the fact that he's sympathetic, so then at the end you want something good to happen. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't want anything good to happen. I wanted his wife and baby, who I was sure the moment it happened didn't exist in real life and weren't a part of the story. I was like, I know they added the pregnant girlfriend just to try to make this character more sympathetic.
Absolutely. And I when I read the Rolling Stone article that you sent, that the whole film is based on, that was the thing that stuck out to me the most, was that they replaced the quirky, snarky aunt that worked in the guy's office in real life, Ephraim's aunt, who was their administrative, or the receptionist or whoever, and would just constantly berate them, apparently. She'd be like, one of these days, Ephraim, you're going to jail. You're a bad egg, Ephraim. And he'd be like, shut up. So, of course, the one interesting character in the whole real life story, they take out and replace her with the hot Latino wife.
Right. You can't have the, middle-aged woman being interesting or good. She's got no place in this movie.
Right, down with that, yeah.
Not to mention there was a third guy. It wasn't two.
Oh, that's right.
There was three of them, first of all. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I look like what the real Ephraim Diveroli looked like, which, by the way, was oddly a dead ringer for Miles Teller. How I would feel about having Jonah Hill play me in the movie. and again, bizarrely, he looks just like Miles Teller. So
it's so weird.
They could have cast Miles Teller in that. It's such a strange thing to do.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wonder if Miles Teller had the chops to do Ephraim's role. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
I mean, he was pretty good in Whiplash.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. But I did feel like the only things they changed for the movie made the situation less interesting. Like, the real-life story was truly stranger than fiction. And the idea that this guy Ephraim dropped out of high school at 14 and was a successful businessman by, like, 18 and had government contracts by 19. And then they cast Jonah Hill, who's, I don't know, somewhere in his 20s, mid to late 20s, something like that, I guess. Like, it could have been even weirder. Like, I feel like they actually kind of ironed out the story to make it less interesting.
No, I agree. They took out the other people who worked for them, so that made it less interesting, because it was just the two of them. Mm-hmm. As we said, the single biggest thing they took out was, like, any social message. Mm. Which, when you read the article, you realize... So, there's a whole lot of stuff in the movie about how these two guys are so brilliant, they figure out there's all these extra weapons in the Balkans left over from the Cold War, and if they can just get their hands on that, they can sell it off to the American government, and everybody makes a profit. And it's this whole big, game to try to do this and get this accomplished. But what you learned from the Rolling Stone article was the whole reason they set up this stupid bidding process in the first place was to do exactly that. The government knew that's what everybody was doing. They couldn't get their hands on those weapons from the Balkans, so they set up the system as a way to do it.
Basically like a nationally subsidized Craigslist platform to just get anyone to just sell them guns.
Exactly. And so it's not like they're so clever they come up with the plan. It's like, no, it's worse than that. It's a whole corrupt system that the government set up so they could get these weapons and then be able to say, oh, we didn't know, or it... I mean, in the real story, everyone's doing it. They get caught because they piss off the wrong people so badly the government literally cannot turn a blind eye to how much they've screwed this up. Right. And no one on the other side of those government contracts is ever reprimanded.
Uh-huh. It was only them. Like, they were pulled out as an example.
Yeah.
And I guess it was the idea that they had become, and this is in real life, that they had become so visible that the government couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, the authorities couldn't let it go. Like, they would have let it go if they could.
Yeah.
But it was just so blatant. They were like, all right, we have to throw the book at them.
Pretty much.
And also in the article, I think... Well, okay. So, I was also struck by that notion that these two guys, these two kids, really, were almost sort of being tossed on a sea of, like, all these mysterious global forces that they had no comprehension. And one of them even says that. I think David even says that to the reporter, that he's like, there were actors, like, acting upon us that we didn't even know who they were or what was happening. We just knew we were being, like, influenced and affected by it. So he wasn't sure if it was like, is it the Albanian government doing this? Is it the U.S. government doing this? Is it the Afghan government? Is it the guy that we made the deal with? Did he come back around? Like, they had no idea what they were dealing with.
Right, which, and again, now that you're saying this, makes me think, okay, that story would have made those two guys a lot more sympathetic if it was seriously like...
It would have been way more interesting.
These two kids who, they're so cocky and arrogant, and they think that they have pulled one over on everybody and have no idea. Like, you see as the viewer, they haven't pulled over anybody on anything. Like, the government knows exactly what they're doing. The government...
They're being used. They're pawns.
Yes. They have all of their, like... So in the movie, they're so great, and they bribe the right people, and they get their plane out of Kyrgyzstan or whatever it was. And, like, in reality, again, according to the Rolling Stone article, Robert Gates flew, and there were all these, like, bizarre diplomatic
Secretary
moments.
Gates, bailed them out.
Yeah, and so it's like, again, that is a much more interesting story to see them as pawns in this, like, what ends up being, like, this giant sort of pissing match between Putin and Bush, and, like, I'm not going to let your weapons out of Kyrgyzstan, see what you do. Like, that's way more fun than to think two idiot kids, like, bribe some dude.
Right. I did find that the article way more interesting than the movie. Probably for that exact reason, that they didn't have any agency. Or maybe in the movie they have an illusion of agency and they realize they don't have any. I don't know, but yeah, there was just so much more. There was so much more going on than just these two guys kind of having an extended spring break.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You use the word spring break, but, like, hangover, like, extended, like, bachelor party, like, whatever, like, bro bonding thing that this movie is trying to sell you on. And
sure,
it was just really sad to me that here you had a good story about, the machinations of the U.S. government in terms of trying to fund this war on terror, and I think, like, there were moments of it, there were glimpses of it. There's a line where they say they're just selling these shoddy weapons. They're like, but they're going to the Afghan army, so the U.S. government doesn't care. If U.S. soldiers were getting them, then they would make sure that they were, properly stored and functional munitions, but no one cares. And I'm like, there's, like, hints of consciousn's in there, and then they just don't tell that story.
Sure. And again, the opening was just beautiful. I thought where they got the little floating numbers over each soldier with the lines pointing to whatever they're wearing, and, like, all just the sheer, just a swaths of oceans full of cash that are just going into. That makes this such a big business for defense contractors like KPMG or Halliburton and the others.
KBR?
Oh, thank you. Which one's KPMG? That's an accounting firm,
yes,
isn't it? Thank you, KBR. And then when he says some huge ungodly number, like, $4.5 trillion, and I think he's about to say, like, is what it costs to fund the war, and he goes, is what it costs to fund the air conditioning bill.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just died inside. And that was great. That whole sequence was really good. Oh, and I just learned recently, the cinematographer that Todd Phillips uses on this and the Hangover movies is the same cinematographer from Garden State a while back, or I guess now, 10 to 15 years ago. And he is responsible for making these films just beautiful. Like, they're the desert shots and just the composition of the frames in general is just gorgeous. They're the most beautiful comedies you'll see, are Todd Phillips movies.
Yeah, I mean, they're well shot. They're just poorly directed.
Oh,
and
sure.
They're poorly scripted as well.
But they sure do look pretty.
They do, and I'll look at Bradley Cooper looking pretty
Absolutely, all day long.
But it's depressing. Like, this could have. It's always funny to me when you're like, the truth was stranger than the fiction, and it's like, here was this totally bizarre story that they made less interesting,
right?
And I don't.
The only thing I can figure is that when I did read the article, both of the characters were kind of, morally void.
Yes.
And they didn't seem to go anywhere as far as, like, people. They didn't seem to grow, or, there was no arc for them. They just had some money for a while, and then they didn't. And then one of them went to jail, or I guess both of them went to jail. No, one went to jail for a while, one went to house arrest, I guess. And then, whereas in the movie, at least, I don't know, one of them learned something, I suppose. I don't know. It's a trite lesson, but...
What does he learn? Don't piss off your international arms dealer?
Don't lie to your wife. Yeah.
That was, like, I feel like the lesson of the movie. Don't lie to your international arms dealer friend.
Absolutely.
He probably has connections.
I mean, sorry, that's just common sense.
Oh, yeah, and pay your subcontractors.
And pay your subcontractors, or they will report you to the Department of State.
Yeah, words to live by, people. Pay your subcontractors.
Yeah, that old chestnut or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I would rather watch just sort of an anarchical kind of like with story with no arc, where you just watch these two kids just act like fools for 2 hours and then meet their comeuppance at the end.
Yeah.
To watch that.
Yeah, so there was this great article. There was a review of a French movie, and like that has nothing to do with anything. And what I'm about to say is going to sound like it has nothing to do with anything. But stay with me here, because it was a point I kept trying to make to people, and I didn't know how to make this point, which is that I am like a huge, huge fan of the original BBC version of The Office.
Right.
That show is so good that the only way I could have watched it was because I had quit my job. And if I had to get up and go to work the next day after seeing that show, I just couldn't have done it. It would have been too painful.
It was too close to home. It'd be like when you have a nightmare about work and you wake up and have to go to work.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So, and I very much disliked the American version of it because they were afraid to go as far with the boss character as they did in the English version, and I kept trying to be like, it's not right this way. And so the review was about something, a totally different movie, but in it the author says the problem with the central conceit is that the character shows glimpses of humanity, so you know he should have known better. And that's when, by softening the character in the American Office, when he does these awful things and you know he should know better, it's just painful and not funny. Whereas in the English version, David Brent clearly never knows any better.
He's irredeemable.
He's irredeemable. He's such a total narcissist. Again, you just love to hate him, you know? He's so convinced of himself. And he can see no wrong in his actions. You just kind of feel sorry for him. And it's hilarious. But when you do things and you should know better, there's no comedy in that to me. Mm-hmm. It just makes me angry. Like, well, then why did you do it? And so they set this movie up as, like, trying to give this guy a conscience and being like he was against the war in the first place. Mm-hmm. He knows he should stop lying to his wife, but consistently does it anyway. Mm-hmm. And you're like, that just makes me hate this guy. Mm-hmm. If they had played the two kids who were in over their heads and didn't have a clue what was going on, I would have felt sorry for them. Mm. But I can't feel sorry for someone who knows better.
Sure. Public reception for War Dogs, I guess, was generally what I heard on the chatter was Jonah Hill is great. Mm-hmm. Miles Teller is fine but bland.
Yeah.
Movie could have said something but didn't.
Yeah.
And that's basically about it.
Yeah, I don't, it's funny because it Rotten Tomatoes often has to make a call as to whether something is a good review or a bad review. And the reviews were really mediocre. And so it got something like 60% fresh, but it could have gotten like almost 0. You know, some of the things that they rated as the person kind of liked it, they really didn't like it very much.
They just
didn't hate it. Yeah. So it was interesting to me. I would feel that you would have had to search out that buzz. It seems to have been it's flying under the radar. It's gotten no attention that I'm aware of.
Sure. It's a mediocre movie.
Yeah, it is.
So, as far as like, well, let's do it. How much impact will this movie have on our culture? Using a scale from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
I'd say 1.
Me too.
Changes nothing.
It changes nothing. No one saw it. It wasn't very good.
Which is unfortunate. Because, like, it seemed like he wanted to do something. It was Todd Phillips seemed to be wanting to maybe say something, and then just didn't.
Well, and it was Bradley Cooper came in with a producer credit. You would think Bradley Cooper, generally quite the political person as well, would have wanted to do something.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Well, famously at the DNC. Oh, yeah, it was at the Democratic Convention, and all the Republicans freaked out, because they were like, I guess American Sniper. I didn't see it.
Oh.
Conservative. And they were like, no, Bradley, you can't be at the Democratic National Convention. And it's like, come on, the dude speaks French. He's not going to the Republican National Convention.
That's brilliant. They honestly thought that because he was an American Sniper, he was a Republican?
Yeah, so it made me wonder if, this was a sort of redemption move after making American Sniper.
I wonder. Or he might have meant his performance ironically. Not even ironically, just look at this person who, I know we're talking about another movie now, but look at this person that just, kills people for a living and doesn't feel bad, and isn't that interesting? And
yeah, no, I'm saying, it strikes me.
And yet they read it as oh, I don't know.
I don't know. I do remember once, I saw an interview with Sandra Bullock, and she was surprised. It was fairly early in her career, right after she had kind of hit it big.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, and she had said, you sign on to a project, and you think that you're going to do X, and somewhere along the way, you get notes, or the director changes, and there's a million rewrites of the script, and she's like, you're already in it, and the final product comes out to be not very good, and it isn't what you thought you agreed to when you started. It's like, that happens to people all the time. She's like, most of us don't decide we're going to make a bad movie, but the movie becomes bad, often, without our control. So,
And that must be frustrating, you're halfway through it, and you've signed a contract. What are you going to do? And now you're in a terrible movie.
Oh, and then you have to do the press junket and tell everybody a million times how great it is.
Pretend how much you love it.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest role of your career.
I feel bad for them sometimes.
It's a good thing they're stinking rich.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, you want to do recommendations?
Well, read the article or the book.
Absolutely.
For sure. I have a personal recommendation of a friend's blog, Shadows and Noise, on music and movies. Check it out.
I guess and would be spelled out. Shadows and Noise.
Yes.
Okay.
Google it. I've enjoyed reading it.
I just thought of one 10 minutes before the podcast recording. If anyone hasn't read the classic novel Catch-22, right?
Run, don't walk.
Exactly. Get yourself a copy. Download it on your whatever magic tablet thing you have that makes pages appear on it. Whatever.
Go to a bookstore. Hell, go to a thrift store that you can pick up.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. There you go. Absolutely. Every store you walk into will have a copy of this book. It's something. Joseph Heller. Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. It really does. It takes what this movie sort of hinted at, as far as the sheer lunacy of government and military spending, be it, blood or treasure. This book just nails it. And it's supposed to be an absurdist comedy, but it reads more like anyone who has any kind of exposure to how the military runs or how anyone in the government makes choices. It feels like just straight up nonfiction. Just like a written out documentary.
Yeah, I mean, a great recommendation. I will say it's very rare that a book has the power to make me laugh out loud. Mm-hmm. And I was constantly just hysterical.
There are still lines from that book that if I suddenly think of them, I will laugh in public.
Major.
Or when they're just when they just start shouting out things in class, hi-ho, Barry Barry. Where are the Snowdens of yesteryear? When Edward Snowden came out as a character, I guess, on the global scene, that was all I kept thinking of, was where are the Snowdens of yesteryear? And it's this character that, Yosarian. You know what? No, I'm not going to go into the plot of this book. You have to read it.
Yeah, it's excellent.
It's really great.
Great recommendation. So, lucky for us and for you listeners, we are coming out of the summer hell.
Hooray!
All the Oscar baity stuff will
Winter's
through.
coming!
Yeah.
Winter's coming! And along with it...
Oh, better movies.
Oh, thoughtful Oscar fodder.
Yeah.
Award season.
Uh-huh. But not that Ben Affleck movie I saw the preview for.
What
The
Ben
Accountant.
Affleck movie?
Worst name for an action movie ever.
It's an action movie?
Yeah, it's called The Accountant, and it stars Ben Affleck, which really just tells you everything you need to know.
I guess so. So don't see that, then.
I can't see how it would be
I
good.
can imagine. And then, I did hear, after all the award season sort of contenders have come and gone, apparently next spring, the next Pirates of the Caribbean movie is coming out. The fifth one.
Yes, and preview, because this will happen. I've been wanting to see this since the preview, and then there's been much controversy. We will be seeing Birth of a Nation.
Oh,
We
yes.
will be talking about Nate
yes.
Parker's rape allegations. So stay
do we
tuned.
have to?
Yeah, we do.
Oh.
We do.
No.
I think it's a good conversation.
You're right.
And, this is something I could have brought up here, except it was so poorly done I didn't even feel the need to. Mm-hmm. Which is, I have huge issues with Martin Scorsese. To a certain extent, he profits off of other people's misery. All his stories are about people doing criminal things and lots of people suffering. Mm-hmm. And to my knowledge, he hasn't donated the profits of any of those films to some sort of, mafia victim support fund,
Yeah, sure.
and I'm like, you're profiting off of that. So sort of moral culpability and how we feel about scandals blowing up, I think.
Be another good direction to take.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any, if you listeners have any requests for us to talk about an issue or a movie.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, exactly. We're here, we're listening. We've got nothing better to do.
You want to tell them your Twitter?
Oh, right. Yes. Tweet me at Snow White Pitch Black. Use the hashtag moviespod.
Yep. I've been using it. We'll be listening. I'm at Funarini on Twitter. You can get both of those handles on our website, www.moviesthatmatterpodcast.com.
That's correct.
Comments are now open. Sorry about that. I'm not... When you get rich... When we get rich and have ad-supported stuff, I will tell you how wonderful Squarespace is, but for now...
we won't mention them.
I didn't realize how to turn comments on, so there you go.
Yes, the less said, the better. I guess that's everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Well, I tell you what, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. So if you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes.
Yes, please rate us on iTunes.
Yes.
Even give us a bad rating. I don't care. Rate. We don't have enough yet. We need people's ratings.
I want attention, quite frankly.
I want some number of stars to pop up. I don't even care if it's low stars.
Absolutely. Just I'm starved for your comments and ratings. I really do need to hear from you guys out there. So please, and iTunes and
we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, and we're on Google Play.
And I think you can rate on all of those.
Yep, you can go directly to the website and download. Mm-hmm. You can grab our RSS feed if you are one of my friends who doesn't use any of those platforms, but has figured out the technology himself.
That is a strange combination. Okay. All right. Well, remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.